Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing everything the media refuses to tell you. You know, in my upbringing, I have so many fond memories of my upbringing. I didn't grow up particularly rich. I'd say we were steady middle class. I didn't grow up spoiled, getting everything that I wanted. But while we weren't rich monetarily, we were rich where it mattered. My parents taught me so many life lessons, they told me so many things, they instilled so many values and ideas in me that have frankly carried me through life. My dad's a man of metaphor and simile. He rarely says things outright, but rather will just come up with some sort of random metaphor that in one sentence makes you understand kind of the whole macro view. And my mom is the queen of sayings, things that were passed down to her through her parents and grandparents. And one thing that has stuck with me my whole life, that my mom has always told me, especially in times of struggle, is that there's always a good for a bad. And I think that probably explains my generally optimistic outlook. When Joe Biden was inaugurated as president of the United States, of course I didn't view it as a good thing. I thought it would be pretty disastrous, and disastrous it turned out to be. But I remember on the day of saying, this is probably going to lead to something good. And I think, if the polling data is correct, if the trends that we're seeing are actually going to materialize into real actual results on election day, if the ideological shift is headed where we think it's headed, then I think in the end, these 4 years of Joe Biden could possibly have a positive outcome. Like I've been saying, I think Joe Biden has been one of the biggest catalysts for the red pilling of the nation and arguably the red pilling of the world. In a way, it's kind of been like exposure therapy. People are being exposed to the fact that Democrats decided it would be a good idea to put a geriatric dementia patient into the Oval Office. Joe Biden, I think, has been fully exposed. Really, the whole puppet theater, this kabuki theater, has been exposed. That's the topic of this video. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, so I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent in the intro. Let's see if I could steer the ship in the proper direction here, if I could, get this video together. Sometimes it's hard, I just open the mic and record. The point that I'm trying to make is that I think like never before, people are realizing that there is a uniparty establishment controlling things from behind the scenes, the puppet masters, and Joe Biden is the puppet. In other words, people are taking the red pill. I want to start off with this clip right over here. Here is a young athlete who is simply speaking honestly, probably doesn't have a dog in the race, exposing the truth about Joe Biden.
Last year, after we won a national championship, went to the White House, took a picture with Joe Biden, team picture. Joe Biden talked to us for about 3 minutes, and then right after that, he asked us for a picture again.
What did he say in that 3 minutes?
Completely ignored Coach Hurley. Really couldn't understand what he was saying, and then he said, all right, let's grab a picture.
Do you think he knows basketball?
Not much.
We can all agree at this point that Joe Biden isn't the president, right? We can all agree that Joe Biden, at this point, is a shell of his former self. He is a hollow being, simply being puppeted around and paraded around, controlled by the shadowy elite behind closed doors who clearly have ulterior motives. During UConn's visit of the White House last year, Joe Biden was taking pictures with these young, incredible student athletes, and about 3 minutes later, he turned back and asked for a picture again. The guy's got goldfish memory. He is in clear cognitive decline. A man who is so mentally unfit and mentally unhealthy simply cannot get elected as president unless he's being puppeted around by his controllers and the truth is being hidden from the public by these legacy mainstream media institutions. And obviously, that's exactly what's going on. Joe Biden gets exposed by a young university athlete and then accidentally exposes himself once again as a totally controlled vessel. Take a look at this.
And it's tied to the hostages. There are a number of hostages that are being held by the Hamas. And just yesterday, we're meeting with the Vice President, our National Security Advisor before that, and they're American hostages as well.
Let me ask you, what did you notice there? Obviously you could tell by the tone of how he's speaking that he is reading, but take a look at his sunglasses. Everything this guy does is choreographed. Everything he says is written off a piece of paper that his handlers wrote for him. You can see the notes in his sunglasses. This guy doesn't have the ability to speak off the top of his head. He's clearly signed a deal with the DNC devil, and obviously his only job is to do whatever the frick they tell him. For Pete's sakes, the guy couldn't even engage in a toast without directly reading it from a pre-written note.
Well, we are the same, Japan and the United States. We may be divided by distance, but generations after generation, we've been brought together, the same hopes, the same values, the same commitment to democracy and freedom, and to dignity for all.
And he could barely do it even with the help of a frickin' script. It's unbelievable, and we have seen this for 4 years straight. The left claims that there's nothing different about Joe, but everything is different about Joe. This is the least authentic and transparent administration in American history, even though Jen Psaki said that it would be the most transparent administration in American history. This president is such an actor, such a puppet, you almost never see him interact naturally. He's always calling on pre-selected reporters, being asked pre-screened questions, to which he responds with scripted answers that he reads off notes.
Next question. Who do I call on next? Hang on a second. I got my list here. Hang on. I apologize. Aurelia of AFP.
That's the president of the United States. He just shows up and says the thing.
Banning books. This is 2024, banning books. Attempting to erase history.
You think Joe Biden knows what's going on with some of these horribly explicit books in K-12 public schools across the nation? Absolutely not. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He simply stands on the podium and says, "Listen, Jack, they're banning books." Yet we're supposed to believe that this guy is vigorous and progressive and bringing us forward. Yeah, obviously not. Yet that seems to be what Joe Biden is trying to tell us. Although, as he tries to tell us, he gets it completely wrong and once again proves to the world that he has dementia.
Elect me. I'm in the 20th century, 21st century.
Elect me. I'm the 20th century. Let's do a quick Google search. When was the 20th century? The 1900s. He doesn't even know what century it is, but this is something we learned in elementary school. The 20th century represents the 1900s to the 2000s. We're currently in the 21st century. He's implying that he's the future, but then says he's the past. You could perceive it as a Freudian slip, and in a way it is. I mean, it's probably the only true thing this guy said throughout his entire presidency, but it was a gaffe. An accident. It was his dementia speaking, or I guess trying to speak. Another element of Joe Biden's skill set, or rather lack thereof, which was also exposed by UConn's Donovan Clingan in that amazing clip that I played at the start of the video. The guy can't freaking speak. Here's Joe Biden being asked a question about whether or not he'll debate Donald Trump.
President Donald Trump is ready to debate me right now. Do you accept?
He just said it on radio. What did he say to immediately?
Immediately?
Yes.
Will you debate him?
If I were him, I'd want to debate me too.
Apparently, he said, if I were him, I'd want to debate me too. Doesn't even realize that that's a self-own. But this guy slurs his words so horribly that I didn't even really know what he was saying. Without a transcript, I'd have to watch the video 15 times and slow it down, apply some audio processing to be able to isolate his words just to understand his response to a basic question. He is perpetually dazed and confused anytime you see him in public. This is supposedly the president of the United States, a guy who forgets where he is, forgets people's names, forgets what office he's running for, forgets what day of the week it is, forgets what month and what year it is, forgets what freaking century it is, doesn't know where to go and where to stand, how to get off a stage. He's a puppet, and I mean a literal puppet. Whenever doing an event, his staff or his wife are constantly forced in a position to steer him. Steer him. That's generally a term that's used for inanimate objects, you know, steering a drone, steering a car, steering the wheel of a boat. Joe Biden is essentially an inanimate object, a shell of his former self, an empty shell, a puppet. The people see it. You know, in the 2020 election, the DNC and the media were able to distract from it. I mean, the fact that we went through a black swan event obviously helped. They were able to pretend as if it wasn't happening, as if it didn't exist. They put him in the basement. And some people, I mean, a good chunk of people simply weren't intellectually curious enough to find their way to the truth. But after 4 years of this nonsense, it's become quite clear it has been fully exposed. And it seems like in the end, it might end up being a good for a bad. Joe Biden might be a single-term president and possibly a great catalyst for change, kind of like exposure therapy, not necessarily in the clinical definition of the term, where you're exposed to things that you fear in order to overcome that fear, but more in the sense that it's been a therapeutic event where people have been able to see the truth or find the truth thanks to 4 years of exposure to this absolute clown show that has been the Biden administration. Hopefully that's well said enough. Anyways, that's the video. That's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. You know, we'd love to have you here. Thanks for watching, friends, and I will see you on the next one.